Hello everyone. So this is today's The Hindu, February 21, Saturday. Okay. So this is the last discussion for this week because tomorrow is Sunday and there will be no publication of the editorial. So we'll generally don't do the discussion of the Sunday newspaper. However, if anything significant for our examination will come, then I will certainly upload the discussion video. Okay. So let us start from here. So the first news is that the US Supreme Court halts Trump sweeping tariffs. Okay, so let us see what is happening. So the 6-3 ruling nullifies reciprocal tariffs Trump imposed on countries including India under an emergency powers law. The court says only Congress has power to impose taxes including tariffs. Now let us see this in deep. Okay, so here is the news. The U.S. Supreme Court Supreme Court has struck down President Donald Trump's far-reaching global tariffs on Friday, handling him a significant loss on an issue crucial to his economic agenda. The 6-3 decision centers on tariffs imposed under an emergency powers law, including the sweeping reciprocal tariffs he levied on nearly every other country, such as India. It's the first major piece of Mr. Trump's broad agenda to come squarely before the nation's highest court, which he helped save with the appointments of three conservative jurists in the first term. The majority found that the Constitution very clearly gives Congress the power to impose taxes, which include tariffs. The framers did not waste any part of the taxing power in the executive branch. Chief Justice John Roberts wrote, "The Treasury had collected more than 133 billion from the import taxes the president imposed under the emergency powers law of the December federal data shows. The tariff decision does not stop Mr. Trump from imposing duties under other laws. While those have more limitations on the speed and severity of Mr. Trump's actions, top administration officials have said they expect to keep the tariff framework in place under other authorities. Trump orders temporary 10% global tariff. Donald Trump said he would impose 10% global tariff for 150 days under Section 122 of the Trade Act of 1974 to replace some duties struck down by the court. He said the new duties would be over and above the existing tariffs. He also said nothing changes in on the trade deal with India. Court rebuff. On Friday, U.S. Supreme Court invalidated President Donald Trump's global tariffs under a 1977 emergency power law. April 2025, Trump imposes reciprocal tariffs on most countries to address trade deficits and emergencies. 2025-26 lawsuits filed by states and businesses challenge the tariffs legality. December 2025 Treasury reports $133 billion collected from the import taxes. Companies like Costco seek refunds. February 20 court rules 6-3. It says only Congress has the constitutional power to impose tariffs. So let us see what is going to unfold. So Trump is basically saying that 10% global tariff for 150 days he is going to implement now. Okay, so that impact of this decision could be done away with. Okay, now SCA steps in judicial officer will now join SIR process in Bengal. Not important, not important. So let us move to the main sections of discussion, that is the editorial page. So here is the editorial. So he's associate professor Ajay Gudvarthi is the associate professor, Center for Political Science, Political Studies, Jawaharlal Nehru University. Okay, so now this is basically the Gen Z and the dynamics of democratic engagement. Okay, so basically Gen Z and dynamics of democratic engagement. Let us try to understand. So what he is writing. So democracies across the globe have been witnessing have been witnessing a backsliding, and counter narratives have not been too successful in arresting the malaise. In this context, Generation Z or Gen Z, those born roughly between 1997 and 2012, has emerged as renewed source of hope at a time when many people had begun to resign themselves to authoritarian regimes and their unresponsive governance. In Bangladesh 2024 and Nepal 2025, Gen Z has a spearheaded regime challenging protest, mobilizing around issues of corruption, transparency, and institutional accountability. These sporadic protests proved to be more effective than the earlier round of such mass protest. Example being the Occupy Wall Street in the United States 2011, Arab Spring early 2010, and the Brazil Spring 2013. Some of these protests hit the headlines but did not make any effective policy changes, leave alone regime change. So how do we make sense of such certain eruptions? Every no Here is the thing. Every generation recalibrates ethics, values, and social practices in a manner that is distinct from the previous generations. Therefore, it takes time to make sense of what the new generations think and say. The ingredients of old practices and imagination melt into a new recipe. The old has an absent presence in the way the new gets articulated. The new looks like a distorted version of the old, and the old generations understandably feel disappointed and disturbed. The essence it's worldwide, long long dismissed as preoccupied, politically disengaged, and lost in the virtual world. Gen Z defied expectations by expressing views in such an organized way. Observers continue to interpret such movements as a flash in the pan political mobilization, characterized by pointed demands but marked by an episodic and short-lived presence. One can make better sense of such political events only if one gets to understand the emergent political objective of Gen Z beyond conventional registers. While democracies are typically understood, while democracies are typically understood in terms of constitutional frameworks and institutional structure, their true substratum consists of shifting everyday moral practices and latent collective emotions. To begin with, the Gen Z is an uncanny combination of radical individualism and social indifference, but with less prejudice and a less John John jaundiced view of the world. It is to remove to be myopic to